We were just talking a moment ago about the hypothetical use of stem cells. How do they fit into a practice? I like the biological concept. Stem cells are there for a reason to regenerate things. As we get older, we make fewer of them. The hard part with stem cells is I don't ever see this being standardized enough for the FDA to ever endorse them because they come from an array of sources. Um, and I know that there are stem cells that can come from autonomous. You can take them from your own body. Uh, what's your thought about stem cells that come from the person versus those that come from like an umbilical source where they'll sometimes collect them?
Well, I think given the right source and the right processing and the right company, that they're all safe. But I've been doing adipose-derived stem cells since 2011. It's one of the first in the US. I banked my own. I use them frequently. They're perfectly safe. And whether it's a joint injection or infusion to target areas of inflammation, they modulate the immune system. They stimulate the microcirculation from your eyes to your genitals. So there's no downside to using your own stem cells. So when they can be banked and culture expanded, then the quantity of cells is irrelevant. You can, order as many as, we think you might need. But they work extremely well, and I've been doing it for a long time. I've done, I don't know, 1,000 plus stem cell joint injections, and it's highly successful. It always works. It's a question of, is one enough? Sometimes we have to follow up injection, and it also depends on the severity of the joint. But half of the people that come to see me with a bad knee, it's bone on bone, and they've been told you need a knee replacement. Not many really have to go on to do that, and that's not always 100% successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This concept of bone on bone, first of all, it's an anatomical fallacy. The articular cartilage is one cell thick. So bone on bone is what the orthopods like to do to convince you got to throw away your joint. The minute you put metal in the body, it begins oxidizing. And I don't want, if I can avoid it, artificial metal in me. It's an unknown quantity going forward. And your ability to regenerate the cartilage with stem cells is something conventional medicine doesn't embrace. They don't believe it's a two-way street. We know, the osteopathic principle of the body having dynamic self-healing can reverse that. We can regrow cartilage. I know it's an extreme statement, but you've seen it. I've seen it. Stem cells, PRP, ozone injections, shockwave therapy. There's so much out there that's outside of the mainstream of medicine. Can we please, folks, stop doing cortisone shots in your knees? Can we just quit that already? It's just a good way to ruin a good joint.
Yeah.
The other part is, and you know this, it's the patient's got to be a partner with the anti-agent. And I think this is the mental framework. You don't, it was Clint Eastwood, somebody asked him how he stays so vital. He said, I don't let the old man in. You got to fight it mentally. And that joint is dependent on the muscles, which depends on the protein, which depends on the testosterone and the effort of the patient, right? Put all together, the joints can revitalize, folks. Don't get it replaced unless you see Julian and let him take care of your joints, or you see somebody like him. And I guess there are more of us starting to proliferate, but like you've said, mainstream's 20 years behind us. Let's talk a little bit about growth hormone. I find this one of the most controversial substances in anti-aging medicine. Is there an age at which you feel growth hormone replacement becomes almost inevitable because it's losing its capacity, or is it individual?
Well, it's definitely individual because it happens at a younger age, like you said, with all of our hormones declining exponentially, really, and at much younger age. I check it on everyone. Every time we do blood work, multiple times a year, quarterly at least if you're on my program, we're looking at IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. Where is it? What was it when you were 20-something? 200 to 250. There are some that think it may need to be as high as 300. but I call it the icing on the cake. First, we got to bake the cake, and that's all your other hormones, good micronutrients, DHEA, possibly pregnenolone, different things, and along with diet, exercise, lifestyle, hydration. And then we start icing the cake. Growth hormone. I get a lot of calls now for peptides. I was at a social event in Aspen last night, and I can't tell you how many. Oh, anti-aging. Do you do peptides? Like,
Right.
oh, great. I want to get on peptides. I said, great. Which one? And they're like,
Right.
I don't know. Do I have to do blood work? I'm like, well, if you're going to see me, yes. I want to do some blood work. I want to see, like, I have someone who's going to stop by today. She's like, I want to get on testosterone. I'm like, well, maybe we should check and see where your growth hormone level is, because if it's already 200, I'm not going to recommend it.
I agree with you 100%, man. It is funny. People think peptides are a singular thing. And when folks say, I want peptides, it'd be like me saying, I want food. Or, do you prescribe pills in your practice, doctor? Because I want pills. Folks, peptides, they're not magic. And in many cases, it is the least needed entity. They are so heavily promoted on the internet. And I see these young people, my son is 20 something, and he's plugged into the community of, let me call them young morons, because they're just loading up on the stuff, buying it from wherever. I read one study that showed the online peptides that you can buy, folks. You can buy them for yourself. Nearly over half of them had nothing in them. They're just selling powder.
See, I have even one of my son-in-law. I call him the same thing all the time. Like, you're so stupid. What he's like, I just bought a bunch of peptides from China. I'm like, I said, are the one that say research only, not intended for use in humans or animals? Well, yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? You a compounding pharmacy, they're FDA regulated. They have to have potency and purity standards or they don't exist. And so I only use top rated compounding pharmacies, and there's multiple sources online where you can go to somebody's peptide something sciences or whatever and buy this research only. Well, yeah, it was only $100 instead of 300. I'm like,
I saw one, Julian, and they were promoting online that they were 99% pure. Now, Julian knows that means they're 100% contaminated. You shouldn't put that anywhere. And furthermore, when people say, I want peptides, what they're saying is, I want a response for something. And what Julian knows, what he does in his practice is analyze what the X factor is. Now, people who feel great, the other type of patient we see is the one who comes in and says, I feel great, but I don't want to age. Proactive. Let me get out in front of this. And so, hormone therapy, yes. The big thing, right? The big three: cancer, heart disease, and dementia. So in my practice, I do a ton of calcium scores. You do infusion therapy. I did a lot of chelation when I had the infusion available. I do a lot of DMSA currently for lead reduction, correlating that with brain protection. The stem cells, growth hormone is hard to prescribe though, isn't it? The FDA doesn't allow us to use it off label. It's highly scrutinized. Therefore, the peptides to stimulate the growth hormone is what most of us end up going to. Tell me about your practice. Are you primarily doing peptide to stimulate growth hormone, or have you found in some cases you have to go to growth hormone?
Well, primarily, and it does work most of the time, and it's dose dependent. Some work better with sermorelin than testosterone, or CJC 1295 with ipamorelin. That one works the least effective of the ones that I've used, but it's case dependent. And if they respond and get close to where it needs to be, fine. I have patients on human growth hormone, and it's expensive. It's $1,500 a month for a Norditropin pen. You can get other forms that are less, but irregardless, it has significant benefits. So it really depends where things are at. Most people will respond to different peptides to improve growth hormone. They may not make it to 250, but if it's 180, I'm pretty happy. It's a lot better than where we started. So,
Julian, you mentioned an important detail, money. And there's definitely a cost factor, right? If your budget for anti-aging is zero, that's a problem. But you ought not to enter into the space thinking that you've got to be a millionaire. There's something that can be done to alter the aging trajectory you're on. Not everybody has to do the same thing. So I always encourage people to work within the framework of their maintenance. Mitochondrial support, we hear a lot about NMN and nicotinamide riboside. These are precursors for mitochondrial support, and also NAD, which can be directly injected. What do you like to use? How do you like to approach mitochondrial support?
of course, I put everybody on CoQ10 because number one, that, if they're on a statin, they have no CoQ10. And so you need to restore it. Hopefully they're not on a statin. And I refuse to write a prescription for a statin because the death rate hasn't changed in 35 years since the Framingham study, in spite of a multi-billion-dollar industry. And anyway, that's another topic. But, NMN is great, and there's some companies promoting the heck out of it. The body has to convert it, and make NAD. And so I use one called Real NAD Plus. It's a sublingual rapid dissolve tablet. It's NAD. And then I use peptides. But, the NAD Plus sub-Q injection, I generally do 3 days a week. I have a gal who's a friend of mine in Fort Worth that I was talking to yesterday. She said, what can I do about this nausea? I haven't taken this in 2 days and I'm still sick. I said, well, how much you taking? Well, I got this from a guy I know. She's a fitness expert. And this guy somehow got her a prescription for NAD Plus and had her start with 50 units every day. Well, you're going
every day.
Yikes. Daily. And I said,
yikes.
You got to start with 25 units, 3 days a week for a month, and then increase it slowly. Maybe you can tolerate 50 just fine. But most people, NAD makes you, throw up your toenails. You don't want to go there and use that much right away. But again, it's the misinformation. It's somebody out there that thinks he's not a physician. He thinks he's a peptide expert and started her on high dose. And she was, I'm about to dinner with my kids tonight. They're in town visiting and I can't eat anything. I'm sick. I'm like, sorry.
Not good. You gotta, folks, you gotta have a physician, a qualified nurse practitioner, in some cases a naturopath, people that are trained in this. This is not trivial. We're talking about your life, and it's even more important to have somebody of the caliber of a Julian in order to project ahead. It's one thing to treat a disease in front of you. It's another thing to look at a person and say, we're going to do this for the future. So mitochondrial support is essential. They do decay as we get older. They become affected by reactive oxygen species. So we've got to address that, right? Free radical maintenance, the support of mitochondria is likely to be a barrier toward progression of cancer, because that seems to be kind of where it originates. I believe in getting after, in my world, I treat a lot of men with prostate cancer. There's actually a niche for a statin drug, atorvastatin, as an anti-cancer agent vis-a-vis prostate cancer. I never use it for cholesterol, but in that niche, it may have a little bit of value, but the overutilization of it is phenomenal. I like to think medicine wouldn't exist if they couldn't create diseases in otherwise healthy people. You thought you were healthy, not so quick, you got high cholesterol. And my goodness, Julian, what have they done with blood pressure? They keep dropping it. They're going to have the entire nation diagnosed with hypertension. A great way to get them all on drugs. Unbelievable. Well, talked about somatopause, stem cells. Now we come to the real uncomfortable part of reflection. How long can a human live? Here you and I are practicing anti-aging and living it. What are your thoughts about longevity for somebody in our age bracket and for somebody who's 30? What is an objective?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are those that think the new number is going to be 120. So, genetics is a big deal. I lost my father July 1st at almost
Sorry.
101, and he had no help, just good genetics. And hey, I'm not going down without a fight, which is why I started testosterone 23 years ago and intermittently growth hormone and certainly everything else that's in the longevity studies, DHEA, metformin, now GLP-1s. I think that 110 is a real number and it depends. I don't want to live to 120 if I'm bedridden and can't go for a hike or do something. It's about vitality, quality of life for as long as possible. Nobody's going to be here forever. That's just isn't going to happen. So,
Hey, I like your 120. When I started my anti-aging practice, God, 15 years ago, Julian, I called it intellectual medicine 120, and the 120 stood for 120 years. It's the Half-Lick equation. How long can a human cell live for? It's Genesis, 120 years, and it is biologically evident. Madame Claudette from France lived to be 120, right? So 120 is a legitimate number. I can't tell you how much friction I got from conventional medicine for hanging that number. I believe it. I believe 120 should be the objective. And when people die in their 80s, we shouldn't accept that as just normal, right? We're changing it. You don't get there unless you aspire to get there. And then you got to plan on it. You got to plan on being alive longer than other people. Do you have the emotional fortitude to watch your peers predecease you? I mean, do you have the wisdom to make friends with young people so you're not alone? And like Julian, do you have the passion to keep engaged in life, in people? So, kudos to the path you're on, the leadership that you've shown, the ability to maintain your own vitality and share it with other people, and do so stepping out of that whole mainstream. I just finished Thomas Kuhn's book. He wrote about the history of science, and he talks about the pivot points. He's the guy who coined the phrase paradigm and paradigm shift. And that's what you and I are talking about. It's a shift from, let me wait here until I get sick versus let me get out in front. We know what the end looks like, and now we know what we could do to help change that arc. The brain, preserving it. What are some of the key elements you feel are contributing to brain preservation, avoidance of dementia, environmentally, anti-aging wise?
well, absolutely hormone therapy, particularly for women, natural estradiol is the best thing that it can possibly do to avert and decrease. It's been shown to decrease their risk by, I believe, around 37% of developing Alzheimer's. So why not make it 100%? I don't have in 23 years, I've never seen a single female patient of mine develop Alzheimer's that maintained hormone balance after menopause. And I had several in their 80s and 90s. And,
Powerful.
they're sharp as a tack and staying.
That's a powerful statement. We know that age correlates with dementia. We also know the per capita rate of dementia is actually declined, and that correlates with taking lead out of gas and paint. Lead is a direct neurotoxin, and in my practice, it's a routine to do lead detoxification. We use DMSA if it's available, intravenous calcium EDTA, and saunas, right? We could sweat out a lot of toxins. I don't do sauna because I'm impatient and I can't sit there that long. But for those who are, I think it's fabulous. How about you, Julian? You partake of saunas?
But yeah, and I don't have one at home right now, but yes, I do like sauna. The other thing that we do for heavy metals, toxins, mycotoxins, microplastics is high dose EBO2 therapy. So it's high dose ozone therapy. First, it's about an hour procedure. Treating 5 to 7 liters of blood, and literally as it goes out one arm, it's going first to an actual dialysis filter that we've measured patients. It removes heavy metals, toxins, mycotoxins, candida, viral particles, and microplastics. And then
That's fascinating. So you can actually measure that coming out of them with the equipment?
when we do blood testing after the
I
test,
see.
we
Yep.
pages and the levels. Absolutely. So
That's fabulous.
works
Yeah.
for me.
And this is all, folks, at the Aspen Institute for Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. If you're in distance, you could fly there, you could drive there. I'm guessing you serve people all over the world, and you just opened up in Cabo, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that. Give us a heads up on that.
Oh, hey, we're in Cabo San Lucas once a month. It's my semi-retirement plan. I'm going to be working for a while, and I enjoy it. But warm weather, Dublin snows high on my list.
All right.
Even though I live in Aspen, but I'm in partnership there with a group called ReHealth, who Rafael Gonzalez, friend of mine and mentor for many years, one of the top stem cell scientists in the world, do some things there with natural killer cells, high dose umbilical cord infusions, things that we don't do in the US. But then I do everything that I do because there's really no one else in Cabo that's a hormone expert. So, we're just started last month and are just growing that business and looking forward to serving people. There are a lot of American and Canadians that relocate to warm, sunny Mexico.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the new endeavor. Look at you going, doing new stuff. Why not? And I know you have a book, Beyond the Fountain of Youth. And do you have that handy? You could show us
I do.
the cover. There it is. Beyond the Fountain of Youth.
We're on Amazon, and we
Excellent.
that's the title of my podcast, Beyond the Fountain of Youth podcast on YouTube. There's an audio book and ebook, available on Amazon as well. And I go through the A to Z, my story, how I did this, why, and then I talk about everything from hormone therapy, stem cells, red light therapy, all the different modalities and things that are available that we can utilize to live better longer.
Fabulous. And, folks, Julian is the real deal. We're talking authentic. If you want to know about anti-aging, dial in his podcast, get his book, get it from reliable sources. We were just laughing a moment ago about people grabbing info. It's like the least credible pathway, the most highly promoted. I love the fact that the internet enables people to research and to discover things. Just don't try to be your own doctor. For goodness sakes, what's that old saying? If a man who treats himself as an idiot for a physician, as much as I know about anti-aging, I have a doc and guides the therapy. So, hey, Julian, this has been an absolute delight. Really, I look forward to hopefully our paths crossing at anti-aging conferences. And I don't know, man, I may have to take a visit down to Cabo. That sounds pretty appealing.
Come on, I'm golf clubs with you.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for being part of my podcast. And on behalf of all my people listening, keep up that great work with anti-aging. And let's go for 120. Let's do this podcast again in about 40 years.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. I'll see you then.
Thanks.